This free step-by-step video comes to you directly from Haynes. You can complete more than 200 jobs on this vehicle when you purchase the complete Haynes online manual at haynes.com.
Warning: brake fluid is poisonous. Take care to keep it off bare skin and in particular not to get splashes in your eyes. The fluid also attacks paintwork and plastics. Wash off spillages immediately with cold water. Finally, brake fluid is highly inflammable and should be handled with the same care as petrol. Always renew brake pads on both sides, even if only one set of pads is worn. Although genuine Renault brake pads are asbestos-free, the dust created by wear of non-genuine parts may contain asbestos, which is a health hazard. Never blow it out with compressed air and don't inhale any of it. Pull the bonnet release latch located on the passenger side kick panel and lift the bonnet safety latch and raise the bonnet upwards. Loosen the relevant front wheel bolts. Then jack up the front of the car and support it on axle stands. Remove the front road wheels. Using a suitable screwdriver, small pry bar or pliers, remove the retaining spring. Mark the position and then release the brake flexible hose from the base of the suspension strut. At the rear of the caliper, remove the dust caps from the guide bolts and then remove the bolts. Lift the caliper from the brake disc. Remove the brake pad and then support the caliper from the coil spring with a suitable length of wire or stout cord. Remove the brake pad from the disc. With the pads removed, measure the thickness of each brake pad. If any pad is worn at any point to the specified minimum thickness or less, all 4 pads must be renewed. If in doubt, always replace the brake pads. Also, the pads should be renewed if any are fouled with oil or grease. There is no satisfactory way of degreasing friction material once contaminated. If any of the brake pads are worn unevenly or fouled with oil or grease, trace and rectify the cause before reassembly. New brake pads and spring kits are available from Renault dealers and reputable motor factors. If the brake pads are still serviceable, carefully clean them using a clean, fine wire brush or similar, paying particular attention to the sides and back of the metal backing. Carefully clean the pad locations in the caliper body / mounting bracket. Prior to fitting the pads, check that the guide sleeves are free to slide easily in the caliper body. Brush the dust and dirt from the caliper and piston, but do not inhale it as it is a health hazard. Inspect the dust seal around the piston for damage and the piston for evidence of fluid leaks, corrosion or damage. Also inspect the brake disc and confirm that it is above the minimum required thickness. The caliper piston must be pushed back into the caliper to make room for the new pads. This may require considerable effort. Caution: pushing back the piston causes a reverse flow of brake fluid, which has been known to flip the master cylinder rubber seals, resulting in a total loss of braking. To avoid this, clamp the caliper flexible hose and open the bleed screw. As the piston is pushed back, the fluid can be directed into a suitable container using a hose attached to the bleed screw. Close the screw just before the piston is pushed fully back to ensure no air enters the system. If the recommended method of opening a bleed screw before pushing back the piston is not used, the fluid level in the reservoir will rise and possibly overflow. Make sure that there is sufficient space in the brake fluid reservoir to accept the displaced fluid, and if necessary, siphon some off first. Any brake fluid spilt on paintwork should be washed off with clean water without delay. Brake fluid is also a highly effective paint stripper. Most replacement brake pads will have an anti-squeal coating, often seen as an adhesive pad, applied to the pad backplates. If there is any doubt, apply a little copper-based anti-seize grease to the backs of the pads before fitting. Be sure not to allow any anti-seize grease to make contact with the pad friction material. Fit the piston side brake pad first by pushing the spring lugs into the piston. Apply a little lubricant if necessary to the spring lugs on the rear of the brake pad. Copper anti-seize grease is ideal for this. Install the other pad into the caliper mounting bracket and then fit the caliper. Fit the guide pin bolts and tighten them to 27 Newton meters. Refit the dust covers to the guide pins. Refit the retaining spring and then place the wheels in the straight ahead position. Refit the brake flexible hose to the bracket on the base of the suspension tower. Depress the brake pedal several times to bring the pads into firm contact with the brake disc. Repeat this procedure on the other front brake caliper. Refit the road wheel. Lower the car to the ground. And tighten the road wheel bolts to 110 Newton meters. Check the hydraulic fluid level in the brake reservoir and refill it to the maximum mark as necessary. If new pads have been fitted, full braking efficiency will not be obtained until the linings have bedded in. Be prepared for longer stopping distances and avoid harsh braking as far as possible for the first 100 miles or so after fitting new pads.